Well, essentially, the discussion is about euphoria and moving towards a factual decision. I'm trying to get the voter to understand what should influence his choice, what should influence his way of voting. Numbers are one of them. There's been a lot of discussion about taking opinion polls. But Angela, even before we get into the fray of what has gone up and sideways, what would you tell to the person who's saying, I want to be able to vote in a more educated or a more informed way, but I don't know if I should trust polls? As a citizen who's just seeing numbers coming out, what would you tell them?
Thanks, Louis. I think one of the most pertinent things to understand about polls is that they're merely a representation of the people's views. And I think what is critical is that in most cases we all sit in our confines and think in a certain way, or we sit in our cohorts and think in a certain way, and we think that that represents everyone's views. So the one thing that opinion polls does is it informs that. I'm not too sure about influencing us, but it certainly will inform me about what the general populace thinks vis-a-vis myself, and I think that's critical, so that you can then make informed decisions. How do you then, gauge who is the best candidate? I think it's by questioning what kind of things they are promising to deliver as presidential candidates. One of the things that probably is not very wise to do is join a bandwagon simply because other people say they're going to vote for a specific candidate. I think it's pertinent, if Kenya wants to move forward in a positive direction, to say, what is the manifesto that this presidential candidate has vis-a-vis the dreams that I have as a person? And so opinion polls generally inform. They shouldn't really influence. I think that is really where the disconnect takes place. Yes.
Not to influence, purely to inform.
It's to inform you.
And Tanga, I'm glad to have you here because I've always worked very close with civil society, and I know you wear different responsibilities with you. But tell me about what civil society feels about the way nominations are being placed now, vis-a-vis how do we move Kenyans from being euphoric to being an informed voter?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me tonight. I think the first thing that we need to understand is that under the new constitution, there are a lot of commitments that have been made, and that are constitutional commitments. I think one of the things that has been happening is a blurring of the lines between what are statutory commitments and constitutional commitments. And if you look at the constitution, political parties are required to conduct themselves in a democratic manner. They're meant to have regular elections. They are meant to have, they are not supposed to promote violence. And you see some of these rules enacted also in the Elections Act and the Political Parties Act. And so I think as a public we should take the political parties' nominations as a way of assessing that particular party's respect for democracy, respect for good governance norms and principles. If a party in its nominations is violating those principles, it's going to violate them if you allow them to run the country. Right. So it's an opportunity to have some insight into the extent to which those parties actually respect the norms and principles that the Kenyan people have said we want to live by.
Right. Gentlemen, I am very honored to have both of you. I have two presidential candidates with me in studio tonight. I can discuss a lot of things with you, and I know that I will continue to do this in subsequent discussions. But tonight, I wanted to narrow down and talk about the nomination processes. And you've been very outspoken separately in how these processes help or do not help democracy. Prophet, might start with you, Professor Kiyiapi. What is your view on this being a step towards achieving the democratic process?
I think for me, the fundamental error occurred when last minute political parties that a lot of people subscribed to became members of, and then invested their time in terms of registering members, suddenly collapsed, and then you had 10, 5, 3 parties coming together. What that meant is that then suddenly, if you had 5 candidates in one party and you had 10 candidates in one party and you had 3 candidates in one party, you're suddenly saying that because of this coalition, this alliance formed, you're now going to pick just 1 or 2 people. And that has created a lot of confusion, not only in terms of the method of nominating, but also confusion at the local level in terms of people shifting alliances and affiliation. And I think for me, the idea of pre-election alliances is really not good for democracy.
Right.
Because in a country like Kenya, where people have been essentially voting along tribal lines, naturally, as soon as you call for an alliance, people will tend to align according to sort of who is leading and which ethnic blocs can align to that. And if you do that, you're actually killing the whole culture of building political parties as institutions. So I thought that given the new constitution, we were going to begin to really, because this law, this Political Parties Act, the whole purpose of it was really to help us to rein in parties and begin to bring a sense of discipline, a sense of culture, a sense of institutionalization. I don't think it's going to happen now, and I don't know how long it will take, because we are back to square one or worse.
Okay. Now, as I said, I invited you both in different capacities, because I'm not saying you're in unison about this, but I respect the fact that you've spoken very vocally against some of the processes we're seeing now. I'm happy to have you on board, Peter. Tell me what this means to you.
I think first, our own party had its aspirants meeting today. And all the aspirants from all over the country meeting today, so that we can set our own agenda about those who want to run on KNC. I think on a fundamental issue, the more important point is that the minute we kept on changing the date of party hopping, that compromised the confidence in which parties could have enjoyed in terms of nomination. And when you look at the scene like we have today, is that we have stretched the actual date of party hopping to the last possible date of an election contest, which means you've allowed party hopping up to the last possible day, which I think is not right for our own internal democracies of our own parties. And if we want to set up institutions, if we pass a new constitution, if we pass new election laws and we say this is the way forward, we must resist changes that are made to suit a particular class so that they can be able to make changes up to the last minute.
Right.
And I think this is a problem that we've seen. Now, when I watch our competitors, of course I smile because they're in a mess. When you look at the issues on Thursday, and you start thinking that three political parties are trying very much to hold up to the last day, and you ask, they want to go into all polling stations and do nominations. It's a school day. How will three parties use the same polling station in the same day? So there are issues, and I think it is important that we go back to what it was meant.
Okay.
6 months before an election, party hopping must cease. That is how you promote internal democracy in political parties, so that they can hold their nominations early in advance, knowing that none of their members will be able to hop away. And that will instill confidence.
And for those who feel your absence separately in the parties you're championing was because you were not in for that kind of competition, what would you respond to that? If I start with you again, Prof.
Come again?
Was it an absence of wanting to compete in a larger group that made you say, I will choose a different path?
No, I think that it was the opposite, that the belief that we have been saying that as a country, the party culture has not been developed. Remember that we started multi-party democracy in 1992, and up to now, you still cannot identify parties as entities that have ideology, that have philosophy, that have values, that have a belief system. So we in RPK say, look, that journey must begin somewhere. And it is much better, in fact, that we go small and instill discipline in our members at the risk of perhaps not attracting as many candidates as possible, even though now we are going to reap, but build the culture so that you come to RBK because you believe in it. You come to it because you feel there's something you want.
So you were not looking for a peaceful space. Peter, something is just a matter of, look, the structure is complicated. I don't want to be involved. I want to have a small house which I can control.
As you know, I'm in a coalition with my brother who also has presidential ambition.
Yes.
So I'm not worried about competition, because even if you worry and you go to your own party, you'll still face that competition in the real election.
Right.
I think the problem is there are very many people out there who do not want to have internal competition for a start. And that is a problem. I went into a coalition because I didn't mind. I was selling values. I was selling issues. I could still withstand those issues in any competition. And I engaged quite a number of people before. But they were all geared that they must run. Now, when you start a discussion where somebody has already made up their mind, then you can't have a discussion. Right. Because you want a situation where you can say, what are we selling? Ideas, values, issues. How do we compete internally? And once you compete internally, you'll have the best person to articulate those issues and to articulate those values. And that is key. Because whether you hide in a small party, or you hide in a big party, or you have a bigger coalition, on the ballot box, you'll meet. Ultimately, you'll meet. So whether you avoid competition at an earlier stage, at the final stage, you still face the same competition.
Gentlemen, how does this translate to the kind of stories we are putting out? How does this translate to the kind of views we're giving Kenyans? Martin, you wanted to say something quickly.
Yes, I just wanted to ask Peter and his colleague. Now it's apparent that we're going to, the nominations that we're going to have, for sure they're going to be a sham. Because, as you said, you're going to have nominations being held in all these parties scrambling to do nominations at the same time, and the fact that the idea of trying to forestall a fallout is not going to be feasible. Even the fact that that was the main primary goal of putting them at the end. But now, since that is not going to happen, what would be the way forward? Does it mean that the parties will just pick fellows that they want to install as their own people whom they will not be able to, I mean, in terms of nomination, there will not be a free and fair nomination process? Is that what it means?
I think for those parties that are doing their nomination on Thursday, they made their bed, they have to sleep on it. There is no time for arbitration. There is no trying to address aggrieved parties. That is what we are saying, and that's why I've said, if we want to build or to democratize political parties, we have to go back to the timetable that has been amended twice. Remember, the first cutoff was in September. The next cutoff was on 4th of December, which would have meant that then parties would have been free to hold nominations after the cutoff date and have time to have dispute resolution. That is not the case for the parties that are doing their nominations on Thursday. We started our processes today so that we can give enough time to our members so that if there is dispute, they still have 3-4 days to deal with the disputes.
Tango,
but beyond that,
wait, hold on. Let me get civil society's response to that concern, especially that element where there will be no room to settle disputes.
I think it's really worrying. I mean, if you think about 2007, we had a violent election, post-election situation that was preceded during the, just before we had the elections, we also had very violent party primaries. And I completely agree with Honorable Peter Kenneth on this issue of rolling back the clock, so to speak. There are two areas where really Parliament has rolled back the clock in a dangerous way. One is in relation to the political parties, the other is in relation to integrity. And we're going to pay the price of this as a country. Right. We really are.
Joe, we had a caution on that. We had a caution on that, but are we safe with what the two gentlemen are giving us as an alternative? Because that's why they're here. I don't want to waste their time talking about what will happen to those other guys.
Well, I'm sure Mheshimiwa would talk about this because he's been a member of parliament, even though their term expires in a short while. And it would be interesting to hear how it happens in parliament because he's been there. I mean, obviously, the sort of things that parliament has done over the last several months is something that is worrying. To an extent, that is why we are where we are, because of basically just playing God, so to speak, with our constitution, which, as if it really doesn't matter.
Okay, Prof.
Well, but just going on that, because you said I'm in parliament, I opposed the extension in September, when it was in September. The same way I opposed the retirement parks in September, and I opposed them on the floor of the House last week. I stood as a member of the executive and opposed the watering down of Chapter 6 I opposed it on the floor.
Okay,
if you remember, I did.
We'll take that on record.
Yeah,
Prof,
I just wanted actually on a light touch and say, even beyond the nomination fiasco, for me, what we are about to see is a much deeper reflection of the quality of leadership in the country, which for me is even much more worrying. Because over and above the shifting goalposts by our parliament, which many of us really protested, and yet every time they were shifting and shifting and shifting, look at the candidates, the aspirants. Despite the fact that we have over almost 50 political parties that qualified, if people really wanted to arise for the country and give an alternative leadership, there was so much diversity. There was no reason why people will gang up like 20 people looking for one position, other than the fact that they were following that party because the party belongs to the tribe. And for me, that's a more serious issue than how the nomination will be done.
Angela, I'm struggling to have a situation where I wanted a better informed voter. But you're giving an option. You're saying, I will give you something to think about, but it might not necessarily be the ticket to getting it right when you give us the numbers. How can we make that be better used by the voter?
I think one of the things that is pertinent to understand is that opinion polling doesn't work in a vacuum. And so the numbers that we churn out obviously have to be disseminated properly and broken down to the general populace. And so media yourselves become very critical. And I think that's not been happening as well as it could.
But the politicians don't agree with you, Angela. Some of them say, you know, she's been bought by this and the other. I mean, let's face it, that's the discussion that I'm sure even this gentleman here will start talking about.
I think that to me is a no-brainer. If we're going to be talking about popularity, and it is numbers that are not pleasing to certain people, and you're trying to sell yourself as the most popular candidate, what exactly do you go out and tell your voters? Do you say the numbers are okay when you're actually looking very unfavorably on the scorecard? I don't normally think it's very surprising for me when they use very despicable and demeaning terminologies for pollsters. I think the most important thing is that we are confident that we're using a science. We stipulate what the methodology is. And to the best of our knowledge, it is a representation of what the people think at that point in time. I think it's important to say at that point in time because there's so much dynamism taking place. What the presidential candidates and their parties do tomorrow may change how the electorate feels. And so when we actually, spew out the polls, this is why we tell you when we did it. Because in another 2 weeks, it could change depending on how you convince me and 14 million other people that you're the better, man or lady.
I don't want to belabor so much on that point because I've expressed my own feelings to Angela on Saturday. But I think it is important for that research methodology to be tested. It is important to know that in research, if you want a particular set of results, it depends on how you frame the question. Because you can frame the question to achieve a certain set of results that you want to achieve. But having said that, I think it is also important to have reality in these things. Nobody is saying that you are right or wrong, but a reality has to be in place. And I think one of the current issues with Angela's results, and I did tell her, it was not about me, I was telling her about reality. Okay. It did not fit in the reality, because it's also important that we do not create a certain perspective that if it did not happen, then Kenyans would feel maybe they were cheated.
Okay.
And credibility is also very important of these results, because we need to move in a certain direction that Kenyans can have confidence in polls, but also see a pollster as credible.
Okay, hold it up, Peter. I need to interrogate that a little more. I'm going to take a quick break, come back, and dive a little more into that question of how do we offer a different alternative? How do we offer a better voter in this country as we go forward? This and more after a short break. Welcome back. You're watching Newsline. My name is Louis, and I'm looking at my usual illustrations, and I'm going to ask my director to put this one up. This is about the party nominations we're talking about, and what it means to this country. We're worried about this. We're putting this up so that you have a look at that. Yep, if you can you have a look at that? And Peter, when you see this and Kenyans are seeing this kind of cartoon, what does it say to you?
It paints a very sad picture of our electoral process, whether party nomination or otherwise. We need a new culture in our own country. We need a culture where you can sit back and say, Party A will hold party nominations in a democratic process that will ensure fairness. Kenyans are looking for a break from the past. It can't be business as usual. It's been business as usual for 49 years. We are 50 years this year. We need some change.
I think that, confusion, but also it reinforces the perception by the public that politics is dirty, and therefore it's a mafia thing. If you just push your way through, you go through. And that is the break we must really have. Otherwise, the biggest challenge to democracy is not even how you win the real election, it's just the process itself.
People argue that the parties that appear to be very peaceful in their nominations really don't have the traction that they have, because there are places in this country where if you got a code ticket or you got a TNA ticket, for example, maybe 98% of your work is done. Are you not having an easy time because maybe your parties are not that popular?
But it goes back again to the logic of how do you decide who is popular? I mean, if the polls are telling the public that this party is in front of this one and this candidate is already winning, even though the substance of it is questionable, as I would like to illustrate shortly, then it makes a mockery of that citizen empowerment, the citizen really knowing what they are voting for. What we are simply saying is that if you can just marshal and create euphoria, and you create confusion and show yourself to be the strong one, muscle, then you're the most popular. But it's a contradiction of everything we've been saying. Because if you listen to the Kenyans in the streets, if you go to the shops everywhere, they say, we are tired. We want new leaders. We want something different. And yet, the same Kenyans are voting for the very same thing that they have been saying they're tired of.
Is it possible to have a measure of this? Is it possible for us to have an indicator of exactly what you've said? I need to know that if there's a frustration, there's a general disquiet out there, how do we pick it up? Do we go to a rally? Do we ask a poll question on television? How do I know, Prof? How do I know that you actually have people who are joining you in saying enough is enough?
Well, the problem is that because of the way the country is and because of the way the history of politics in Kenya, the history of politics in Kenya is that keep quiet, don't waste your time, go look for money. In the last 2-3 months, just go and pour the money, create crowds, marshal the crowds, and boom, you're through.
How old is this history?
But
wait. How old is this history?
Ever since we started as a country, Prof, we have never really interrogated leadership in any serious sense. For example,
but hang on, Prof. If that be the case, then how honest is your bid now? Can you change that history in this particular bid?
It is honest because there is nothing superficial we have done. We have simply tried to convey the message in as realistic a way as possible. Meet the people where they are, explain the message. But sometimes it is even frustrating because if that message is not coming through, if, for example, the focus is on the crowds, then the message is lost because nobody's listening to the message.
Peter, I
want to speak about traction because you spoke about traction.
I'll let you speak about traction. Come to that. But I want you to also add that to the question. I don't want to look at you and just say, Peter's a nice guy, and I'm looking for a nice guy to be my president tomorrow. I'm trying to look at how do we change that which we are saying has been on for too long, and how do we make that attractive to the voter?
I'll come to that. He spoke about traction. Today we had about 800 aspirants who would like to compete under KNC banner. And it's not just an issue of popularity. I took part in an election 5 years ago. PNU was a party of choice in Central because that was the president's party. But look at Kinangop, Lari, Limuru, you go to Kidunguri, you go to Gatundu North, you go to Kiharu, you go to Mathera, and Mukorene, they elected people from different parties. And the PNU candidates lost. It is no longer an issue of popularity. It is an issue of what is right.
Yes.
And I think what Kenyans ought to look at is what is right. Right? Because if we look at what is right, then you will make an informed decision. If you make an informed choice based on other issues, then stay ready to be held up for 5 years because you made a decision based on those facts.
Are we guilty?
You
Joe
mentioned
and Martin,
something.
are we guilty of showing Kenyans the wrong picture? Because now how do we measure this? This popularity has come up, traction has come up. Angela is under pressure in terms of polls. Yeah. But is the question,
but isn't that one of the indicators? I mean, obviously there is something that is right, that is all these things. But at the end of the day, people wake up and go and vote. And isn't that what will count at the end of the day? There will be no qualitative analysis of one vote, that this vote was based on...
Then why do you complain when you see councillors fighting at City Hall, yet you elected them? You get the leadership you deserve. So if you don't take charge, if you don't think, if you become emotional and vote because you are emotional, you must be ready to take note of that poor leadership.
There's a couple of things I'd like to jump in on this conversation. The first is, I think one of the things personally I've been grappling with, I'm now not even necessarily speaking from a civil society perspective, is that whole issue of how do you engage a society that actually is nurtured in a particular political culture. And I think the Kenyan people really need to examine what it is they're choosing in terms of their leadership. And until we begin to make choices where we're moving away from personality
and euphoria,
to issue.
And euphoria.
I actually don't have a problem with euphoria, incidentally. I have a problem with personality, because you can be euphoric about something good.
Yes.
So for me, it's not the euphoria that bothers me.
It's the guy who's generating the euphoria.
It's the fact that we appear to affirm what I consider to be actually essentially bad behavior. And in terms of the media, for me the challenge lies in the fact that I feel that politicians, particularly in the last 5 years, have come to completely dominate all our space in a way that I think is unhealthy for any society. You look at the humor moment on the news, it's politicians. Even that is not shared with other segments of society.
Look at Joe and Martin.
And so it's
look at
really
Martin. That's why
problematic.
They sell bad news.
In Kenya, we treat politicians like celebrities. Correct. This is not a norm anywhere else. And so when you have a group of people who you're treating in that way, and then they engage in bad behavior, with all due respect, then what are the messages that are being sent to your children, to your society as a whole?
Angela?
Louis, I think just to get back to your initial question, which is how do you establish? I will only talk about what I know, which is research. That's what research does. Now, one of the things that I normally see with our political class is that they guesstimate. They listen to the crowds, they listen to sycophants, they listen to the people who work for them, and then they make postulations based on that. So that when someone says the people in Kisii love me, it's not because they've gone and scientifically established it, it's because the people around them who, for various reasons, want them to feel that way, have told them so. And that we see with lots of, people who are in the political class. Now, having said that, political polling is not the only thing we do. We've invested in a value study over the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. And one of the most worrying things in that value study is, just what things Kenyans value. And it's really informed by how we've been inculcated, like at Sango, and I think Peter has also mentioned, that materialism has become the most important thing. And if materialism is the most important thing, then what happens is, when push comes to shove, on that election date, the thing that matters is the carrot that's dangled. So it doesn't matter what values you spew out at that point, and you're talking to an electorate that is, you know, predominantly living below $1 a day. How then do you start telling them about values? But these are the challenges that the politicians have to deal with. They have to find messages that can actually resonate with that person who's suffering, who then has to make that decision between taking the 5,000 shillings that may come his way, or then voting for this real value-based, issue-based presidential or political candidate who can change his life and his children's lives for posterity.
Okay, Angela, one second. Angela, of all the polling you've done and all the politicians that have been listed there, and whether they've communicated to you directly or indirectly, is every politician upset with you?
At some point in time, I think every politician has been upset with us.
So now, you have a variance of upset?
I've just got a variance of upset.
Okay, I'll come back to that.
Can I?
No, wait, I don't want them to get away with what you've said. There was a challenge from here and a challenge from Matsango. Martin,
Yes.
these have become celebrities. You have taught Kenyans to idolize them, and you're encouraging bad manners.
No, I differ with the Sang on that point, because in terms of a country moving forward, there are many pillars that you have to eschew in terms of how situations occur. Because if you don't have a stable country in terms of politically, you will not be able to move other sectors of the economy, like development and stuff like that. So if you have a country which is unstable in terms of governance, then you have a problem. And in terms of how we offer coverage, politics is a game of numbers. Are you telling us that when a politician who are moving crowds and doing stuff like that, we should ignore all together and try to look at some other
Martin, are they moving numbers every day?
They are moving.
Joe, I need you to respond to that.
He can't go on.
He won't, because you will answer him. But I needed him to respond to that.
Look, give us a chance, because he cannot say that we wake up politics, spend politics, sleep politics.
That's not what I said.
That's right. We know. And you look at the Standard every day. Look at today, 3 pictures of the crowds. Where is the economy? Where are our problems?
Education.
Where are our issues? They are not there. You are not, for example, trying to tell Kenyans that they have a high rate of unemployment, that we will face hunger if we do nothing because we are growing at 1.2 million a year, we'll be 53 million in 10 years. Where are the Kenyan issues? Why not divide your headline into 3 segments? Have your political segment, have your economic segment, and have a social segment.
Response?
And do you know, that's right.
Even more practical.
And do you know what I've noticed now?
Also?
Do you know what I've noticed? And I'll tell you this.
Yes, Peter.
On a number of occasions, I've followed cars as I drive to work, and I find people buying your newspaper and simply removing the magazine, paying the vendor, and returning the main paper and carrying the magazine, because it makes much more sense to them. I think we need to put country's interests first. Country's interests first cannot be just politics. We have had, let me just finish. We have had political unstable countries like Italy. Let me just finish. Israel, India, having elections every other time, but the economy has sustained, and it continues to sustain. So I do not buy the idea that you cannot have a country when the politics are unstable. If the economy is stable, you can have a country.
Yes, James.
I think in terms of a practical way forward, you, the media guys, told us just a while back that in January, you're going to have us on stage, all the presidential candidates, to speak to the Kenyan people about what we believe in, and you can question us. And suddenly we came into January, and nobody is talking about it anymore. It's like it is dying slowly. We want those
The
debates.
debate is on the 11th of February.
You get your moment on that day, because you said you wanted to sort out your nominations first. Maybe you are not having that many problems.
I'm not ignorant of the dates, but I do know a lot more than the dates are saying.
Okay.
Because we were told it will be in January. Now, the same thing we're talking about, shifting goalposts, is again taking place here. so that when we go to February, somehow something happens and there are no debates. We want the debates.
Okay,
okay,
let them respond. Let them respond.
Prof, you can't say that because it's most of the candidates actually said they're still dealing with their party nominations. Maybe you aren't having that many problems in your party with that, but a lot of them are dealing with other things. They probably would not be very interested in that debate right now. But it will come, and you'll have your day on that podium. But I think the most important thing that we need to say here, let's not pretend about it. I mean, there's something important about politics, and that is why you gentlemen are going to be president. You're not seeking to be the CEO of some company, because you know politics matters in this country and indeed in any other country, because the kind of politicians you have determine a lot of other things in life. And therefore, as media, we cannot shy away from politics. Obviously, we can have a discussion about how much of it, but with 6 weeks to an election, why wouldn't we be talking about the people who want to lead our country?
I think we said you needed to subdivide to also ensure other segments of the country are covered, and I think that is what
I remember that Peter
was saying.
Martin, your page was told to be not well divided. And you're the one who started that off and saying we need to stay here.
I needed to jolt their memories and their minds so that we can have this conversation. But as things stand, even PK knows very well, even after we finish this election, the next day the same leaders will be already on a campaign trail. From the word go after the elections on 4th March, already trying to upstage the fellows that who have been elected. But that's why
I'm glad Martin follows politicians with his media rather than the other way around of politicians following the media.
Back to the polls.
Let the lady speak.
I want us to comment on the polls.
Angela was saying something.
I just wanted to respond to the question on the crowds. As researchers, one of the things that we know, because we are always accused when the politicians are at the podiums, they say, look at the crowds, look at the people here, and they say we're not popular. But one of the things that we do know, and I think media needs to be perhaps a bit more investigative when you're reporting, is that a lot of those people who go into those crowds are motivated, whether financially motivated or otherwise. We know about listening. We know about listening and viewing fees. So it may be you're laughing, Peter, because you know it's true. We know a lot about you guys, just like you think you know about us. But you know,
let me introduce another element to this, because I like to capture this illustration. I heard you, Prof. I'll come back to you. I know I'll come back to that, but I have an element. I need to go to Mshamba's diary, because this is part of the discussion we're having now, and then I'll come back and wind up on the contention of the polls and the contention about what we cover day on end.
Hata huyu ni chairman alikuwa ananiongelesha. Nikaona tutumalizie maneno, then we move on. Life is too short to make it hard. How can you make it hard and it's short? Make it soft. Yes. Wewe governor. Governor.
Nilikuwa nataka combine governor na senator.
Huwezi combine. Unapata certificate moja tu. Wewe vile uko na kitambi hivyo, it is okay. Watu wanaweza kuamini. Mchoka hapa na nini sample to win, see? Mtu akufuata hii si ati ni manager.
Kuna kati tai.
Yes. Kafana. Okay.
Good. Thank you.
Sasa wewe
huyu mpatie.
Senator wewe si pana. Ana kitambi hata. Hiyo ni kasukubwa. County representative. County representative wapi ya county? Angangane county. 2017 kucha kama uko na kitambi governor nimekupa. You will have no problem in that. Yeah, you will have no problem in that. Senator lazima angalau akue, if not half of him, just 3/4 of him. You can't have a governor big and then a senator very small. No, it doesn't match up. Sasa
mambo ya county rep, niko na kijana yuko na 20,000, kama naweza tumpatie pia moja.
20 ni kitoko. No 50. Akuche akuche na 50 tu. 20 kitoko. Sasa hata si tuko 4 20 itakuwa 50. Okay. Okay, that's it. Tufanye hivi, ficha hiyo vitu. Nataka kwenda press conference, twende na wewe ndio inaonekana niko na watu pia.
Okay.
Alafu huyo ni yuko hapa nje, Tongola.
Yuko nje.
Basi, good. Basi, unataka huko, yeye huko. Then we tell people we are free and fair. Si ndio? Ficha.
Now, I've called this press conference so that I can be able to dispel any rumors or any doubt that anyone has about the nominations. We are going to have free and fair nominations in the broad daylight. Mimi hata nimeenda kanisani jana. I'm very religious. I cannot lie. So, if you doubt that we are not going to have free and fair nomination, then that is your problem. As I repeat again, we are going to have free and fair nomination. Ukabila? No, yes, ukabila. Hatutakuwa na ukabila wote. Hakuna mtu ambaye anaenda kuchaguliwa ati yes, sijui ni ndugu ya nani, ati sijui ni tata ya nani. Hakuna kitu kama hiyo. There are no sacred cows. Hata vile alisema kwamba hatachagua mtu hata mmoja. Yes. Yes. Nobody will support. No one is going to be pushed. Wewe unataka kusukumwa kwani wewe ni mkokoteni?
Welcome back, gentlemen. Tell me I'm not crazy to put that on air.
You are not crazy.
It's real.
It's real. But before we go to it, I want to come back to the guys of the media. Look, we want to build our country. It's about our issues. Where in the space of the media do we test the Kenyan issues vis-a-vis the politicians' ambitions?
Okay.
Because it will be very important to test our issues and say which politician is talking about the issues. Because this is very key. In terms of dissemination and civic education that my two sisters were talking about, unless Kenyans know what to test a leader against, that might just be lost.
Okay, Peter.
People need to understand what are our issues. I saw one media house try to say the 12 Kenyan issues. And they did it for 2 days and then it just disappeared. But I challenge the media, let them not set the agenda for Kenyans. Let them allow details out there so that Kenyans can set the agenda for them. Because what we see is a situation where you want to box Kenyans, where you want to limit Kenyans into one state of mentality. Even if you look at what is going on now in terms of politics, it would be important for the media houses to check and say, are we giving enough airtime to all of them equally? Or are we being fair to some and being unfair to others? Are others being heard more than others? Because we are looking at a country that we love, all of us.
Politics by its very nature is about interest. And these interests are playing at different levels. And I think instead of perhaps blaming one another, it is incumbent upon all of us as Kenyans to try and moderate this interest a little bit so that we can allow the emergence of this new republic. Otherwise, if we play the game under the same old rules, then we will delay the opportunity, even though our new constitution gives us the promise.
Okay, gentlemen, you have to respond quickly to that, and I need to go to the ladies. You want to start?
No, I'm just wondering how on earth we are expected to cover the issues without setting the agenda, because 98% of the time the politicians don't talk about the issues. Who on earth is going to talk about them? If it is,
Joy, I think
that you need to bring out the issues. Don't ask where on earth. It is on this earth.
That's exactly. But if
Joy,
we are bringing,
we are
bringing them out, and you say we should not set the agenda,
Joy,
and at the same time the politicians are not talking about it.
I think you should set the agenda, and then stay disciplined and prosecute and execute that agenda. For example,
set the Kenyan agenda, not the political agenda.
I need Martin to respond.
Let me just give you a small example.
Quickly.
For example, I've been talking about issues ever since I came out. Yet, if you listen to when the people meet me, they say, but we don't hear about you. But it's not that I'm not speaking. It is that I'm not given the chance to come out to explain what I'm talking about.
That is the agenda I was talking about.
Okay, can I wind up with
That is the agenda.
Yes. Even if you look at politics the world over, even in terms of how it's conducted, there's no way you'll find in terms of political coverage, there will be all sorts of the fairness that they're looking for. Even in the latest one in the US, definitely you saw how the media
give us basic minimum.
This contest will not end now.
No, Louis, but there is a point that Martin should understand. In the US elections, they discuss healthcare in the political campaign.
Yes.
They discuss employment rates. They discuss taxes. That's all we are saying. Interrogate the issues.
Okay, I've got two ladies.
Interrogate the issues. Don't run away from.
Just one.
Don't run away from the problem.
Okay, Joe. That in the U.S. actually, which we haven't done here, they had a debate for Obama and Romney, and they had a debate for the smaller candidates, like 12 of them somewhere. I really don't know whether we should go that direction.
No. We are talking about bringing out issues in a campaign. No, not just mere entertainment, but bringing out issues. And I give you a specific example. Okay, they discussed the healthcare. No, just wait. They discussed the healthcare, the healthcare system, and analyze what each candidate has on healthcare. They look at the unemployment rate and they discuss it. The taxes, they discuss it. Safety and security, they discuss it. And you know, it kind of brings the country's issues out and kind of allows the electorate to see what solutions there are. That's all we are encouraging you. We are not blasting you. We are saying just open up, broaden up a little more. It will help the society.
Angela, okay, your contest will continue, but everybody has made their point, which is clear. Angela, I need you to say something in closing with regards to your numbers and what's going to happen going forward.
No, we haven't actually responded to her numbers, and I wanted to just make a point. That
okay, if you have anything to say to Angela in one line, do you have something to say to Angela?
No, but
okay, you?
Lou, you didn't give me a chance to explain
but it was not about you and Angela tonight.
No, what I wanted to explain is that when you do polling, a sample is supposed to represent the whole. If you measure the sample, you make conclusion from it, it is as though you measured the whole. And if you measure the sample and you try to look at the, apply it to reality, and it doesn't give you what the reality is, then either you're biased or the sampling was wrong.
Angela?
And I told Angela, and I want her to explain to me, she gave me, for example, 0.1%. What that means is that if the 14 million Kenyans voted today, I would get nationally 14,000 votes. Honestly, even my own constituency has 100,000. So to that, if you look at just that number, if her sampling was correct, then if I apply that percentage to wherever I am,
okay, Angela
it should give a reasonable number.
Angela is here. Let Angela respond.
So just explain how you think I have.
Angela, give me a general response.
Louis, I'm going to give you a general response.
I mean, to all of us.
To all of us. Yes. This is the problem with trying to make conclusions based on absolute numbers. Now, it's almost like saying because you've gone to school, it therefore means that you're going to pass the exam and you were PS for education. That does not follow in all cases. Let me finish. Let me finish.
Hold on,
yeah, Prof, let me finish.
Hold on.
Explain the
so
in
the same breath, just because you come from a specific place does not mean that all those people will love you. And even if they love you, does not mean that they love you enough to vote for you. Now, these are some of the, conclusions and estimations but I think this is what you've just said.
Okay, let me put it this way.
Yes.
You're not going to make each other happy now. So just give me a conclusive statement in the way.
I think so that's.
Prof, I've heard you. But you're very clear. But the thing that is happening now is she's not about to tell you that she was wrong. So we're never going to leave the studio.
No, what I'm just saying
I think apart from that,
Prof, hold your horses.
So that's the first thing. Yes. That we cannot just make conclusions based on what we think and wish.
Right.
Just because Angela is a lady, I therefore would come up one day and say I want to be president and all the women will vote for me. It doesn't hold true. That's not the way Kenyan voters or voters the world over vote. Just because I come from a specific constituency doesn't mean those constituents will then think I am the most, likable candidate. And this is what misleads our candidates sometimes, some of them. Okay. Now that's one thing. Now when we talk about representation of the sample, we are very open on how we actually, design our sampling frame. In this case, our sampling frame was, informed by the BVR register as at 18th December. So when you talk about it being representative, that's exactly what we use. So if it is 100%, we say what is a number that represents, this particular region. So if it is Nairobi, we know that it is 15 because there are 2 million voters out of the 14 million. You then will divide that almost very simply with the total sample that you have. So if it is 1,000, then you'll talk to 150 people in Nairobi and vice versa. Okay. That is really one of the ways that you ensure that the sample is representative. Right. Thereafter, what happens is that you try and randomize your sample at the basic unit level so that you give every single person in that particular area an equal opportunity of being interviewed.
And just to close, the one line you gave Kenyans, just remind them, when you put out those numbers, they are supposed to do what and not the other?
They're supposed to inform, not to influence.
Right. I just need you to remind people that. Atsango, now that you kicked up a storm in my studio, can you say in closing what your final sentiments are?
Well, my final sentiments are really that the Kenyan people need to start interrogating the basis of their choices. And we need to start to understand that when we vote, we are taking a huge responsibility. You're actually choosing to place your children's lives in the hands of the person that you're choosing. And really, in the same way, you would think twice about the quality of person that you allow into your home. You're doing the exact same thing. Are the people that you're allowing to look after the country be the kind of people you can trust in your home? Right. I'm particularly concerned that when our politicians kept moving the date backwards, they're actually demonstrating something. We lack a culture of integrity. Our politicians do not honor their words. But our politicians are a sample of us. So what does it say also about us? That we are comfortable in trusting people who do not honor their words. Okay. And so we need to begin to demand more if we really want more and a better country to live in.
Thank you, Atsango.
Thank you.
Prof, your closing statement tonight.
Kenyans, the next election is the most important of all elections ever. And I want to urge all of us to take responsibility for Kenya. I want all of us to stand up, and as you go and vote, look at every one of us. You have listened to us. You have listened to our presentation in terms of issues. Make a wise choice because you're shaping the destiny of your children. And don't be influenced by anything else other than your conscience. What you believe to be the right thing to do it for Kenya, do it for your family, do it for your children.
Thank you. Peter, take us home.
Kenya is our country. We must live as Kenyans. We must never allow the events of 5 years ago to come back to haunt us. Life will continue after March 4th. Life goes on after elections. We must see our unity in being together rather than being divided. And above all, it's critical that we vote the right leaders, that we vote people who think about Kenya, people who have ability, people who have passion, people who have a vision for our country. It's about all of us. It's about future generations.
All right. I think I'll just pick up from where Atsango said, the person you're actually giving that responsibility, is this a person you would allow into your home? And we've seen a lot of backlash on members of parliament who've now gone back to contest. I just want to remind you, as much as you complain and contest and even just say all these things about them, you're the person who's empowering them. So you might want to take a step back and ask yourself, who will be representative of me if indeed they will have the power to do the things we're seeing them do? Thank you for watching Newsline. My name is Louis. Have a good night.